Hello and welcome to this round 13 of GP Sydney, and we've been talking about him, Brian Braun-Duin. If he's going to make the top 8 of this GP, he's doing it on hard mode, playing against one of the best competitors in the game, Yuya Watanabe. Both these players on 10 and 2, and it looks like Brian Braun-Duin in one of your favourite archetypes, Frank Karsten, that being blue-green.
Yep, blue-green emerge. Always nice to be able to cast some creatures that turn into humongous Eldrazi monsters ahead of the curve. Now, BBD missed his 2-drop, sacrificed his Terrarion in the hopes of drawing a 2-drop, missed. Not even a creature on turn 3 for him. Whereas Yuya, well, he has a Rancid Rats on turn 2. Could adverse shoot 2 damage on turn 3? Nope, just a Crow of Dark Tidings, so Yuya ahead early on.
Yeah, Yuya in one of my favourite archetypes, the black-red archetype that we saw Willie Adel drafting as well. Probably not too happy to see the creature that went to the graveyard there of Crow of Dark Tidings. Midnight Scavenger obviously wants to be getting cards back from the graveyard rather than going there itself. Meanwhile, the Enlightened Maniac has come down, bringing along an Eldrazi token for Brian Braun-Duin. He's got some blockers now, though none of them will be able to block that Crow of Dark Tidings.
Well, one thing that Yuya has access to on this turn is to shoot down the 3/2 Eldrazi with his artifact and then attack with both of his creatures. I also see a Borrowed Hostility in his hand. That's the new red Escalate card that gives +3/+0 or First Strike, or both if you spend enough mana. But actually Yuya had a fine follow-up in the Stallion of Ashmouth. He chose not to attack with the Rancid Rats, indicating that either he wants to trade it for the 3/2 Eldrazi or perhaps save it for a bigger creature that may come down on turn 5 or turn 6. So far, he can just take some damage, sit back and save the Rancid Rats for a bigger threat later on in the game.
I mean, given that he didn't block with it, I'm surprised he didn't attack, because the only creature that could have blocked it, given its skulk, was the Enlightened Maniac, and that would be a straightforward removal for the 0/2. Yuya relatively close to getting Delirium here for his steed, his Stallion. Sees a big emerge here coming from the other side of the table, though.
Hello, Drownyard Behemoth, 5/7, even has hexproof, so Yuya can try a lot, but no removal spell is going to touch this thing, and it even has enough toughness to survive a pump from the Borrowed Hostility. So, well, that is a fine ambush over there, and this is exactly what the blue-green deck is trying to do in Eldritch Moon. There are plenty of creatures with Emerge in these two colors, plenty of creatures that are happily offering themselves up for these Eldrazi monsters, like the Enlightened Maniac. So BBD giving a good example of what this color combination can achieve.
Now, of course, as the game goes longer, those Rancid Rats will be able to trade quite happily with the gigantic monster that is Drownyard Behemoth. So this is kind of a short-term removal spell for Brian Braun-Duin rather than a long-term plan, but still can't argue with the fact that he's got a big monster to attack with at least the once, and that's exactly what he does here, getting his hits in where he can, dropping Yuya Watanabe down to 12 before playing another copy of Enlightened Maniac. So this kind of what the Emerge deck wants to be doing.
Exactly. Now, one trick that Yuya may have access to on the next turn is to give his Rancid Rats First Strike with Borrowed Hostility. That way, thanks to Death Touch, if it blocks the Drownyard Behemoth, it can take it down and, well, survive, because it would deal First Strike Death Touch damage before receiving any damage itself. That Crow of Dark Tidings could attack if Yuya wants to enter a damage race, or it could stay behind, potentially as a blocker for the 3/2 Eldrazi if Yuya wants to play a slower, more controlling game.
And this is one of those areas where having an idea of how archetypes play out becomes kind of important. You can get a sense of whether or not your mid to late game, on average, is going to be better than your opponent's. It looks like Yuya Watanabe wants to get the damage in where he can. His red-black deck perhaps better set up for being aggressive than for a game going long.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, well, Brian may be thinking of this Borrowed Hostility that I mentioned, but even if that play were to happen, it's just a 1-for-1 exchange. Nothing too bad. Ooh, ongoing investigation. So whenever creatures are gonna deal combat damage, well, they will provide a clue. And BBD doesn't actually, well, the whole potential board hostility doesn't really matter here. BBD is just not willing to offer his Drownyard Behemoth in a trade for the Rancid Rats, which makes sense. Yuya would obviously instantly trade his Death Touch creature for the 5/7, and the 5/7 can, well, at least defend from the Traben Foul Bloods.
So now you, with a decision as to whether or not he wants to block the Eldrazi. Obviously, with ongoing investigation in play, there's a stronger incentive to not take combat damage than simply protecting your life. The clue's definitely valuable for Brian Braun-Duin here.
Oh, Yuya is definitely going to block. Well, I'm just expecting him to consider between blocking with the Traben Foul Bloods or blocking with the Rancid Rats, and or whether to use the board hostility here. Well, first strike, the trick has been used.